Activities represent the steps where work is performed on your entities. Think of them as assembly, review, approval, packaging, checkout, or anything else that transforms the product or service. An activity is where something happens to an entity. To create one, select a white activity icon from the palette and click the layout. Rename it directly on the diagram. No need to open the Properties window. Once you start double-clicking activities, you step through the process to define what happens next. Activities can take time. Process entities one by one or in groups. And hold entities before or after processing. In short, activities define the core work. Every activity has two fundamental properties: capacity and time. Capacity tells you how many entities can be processed at once: one, a few, or thousands. Time is how long the work takes. You can enter a number, a distribution, or a formula. For example, if the capacity is set to 5 and the time is set to 10, it's as if 5 workstations could each process a single entity independently, taking 10 minutes. Each capacity unit can start independently of the others. If a resource is assigned, it's captured before time begins. Each activity has optional waiting areas. The input queue stores entities waiting to begin work, and the output queue holds entities waiting to be moved downstream. When there's no space available, the entity stays upstream. You can turn statistics on or off at any activity. You might turn stats off when an activity is used solely for modeling, such as a queue that feeds entities into a model, or something that happens before the scope of your model. The reason not to include stats for something outside the scope of your model is that it might skew other statistics. Some work is more effectively processed in groups. That's where batching comes in. A batch forms when a required quantity is reached. For example, in heat treating, the oven isn't run for a single part. They wait until enough parts arrive, then process the entire batch. The batch behaves as a single entity during processing. Batching can happen in the input queue before the activity, in the output queue after the activity, or in both. A batch returns to individual parts by unbatching. Batch size can be fixed or attribute-driven. This is perfect for situations like medical labs, where deadlines force small batches, or when batches are required before lunch or the end of shifts. To see how to create short batches or time-triggered batches, review the model objects on batching. A few things to consider. You need enough queue capacity to hold all the entities before the batch starts. Resources assigned to an entity before batching can become locked inside the batch and not accessible until unbatched. If you need to represent a job as a single unit, consider modeling the batch as a single entity. Instead of batching, multiply the jobs count by the processing time per entity. As part of the overall costing capabilities, activities can automatically add cost to each entity. Usually, activity costing is used when resource costing is not used, but both are allowed. Options include the cost per completed activity, or per hour of processing time. These feed into the overall system cost reporting. You can also classify time in the following ways: value added, work that a customer would pay for; non-value added, waste or delays, work that the customer doesn't want to pay for; required non-value added, items required by the business or regulation, but the customer would prefer not to pay for. These designations quantify wasted time and help the system identify opportunities for improvement. When the result is viewed in the hotspot graph of the output report, you can see the areas that will offer the greatest return. Sometimes your process needs more detail than you want on the main chart. That's where submodels come in. Link an activity to a subchart for deep logic or subprocesses. You can simulate that subchart or skip it entirely during runs. It's a clean way to manage hierarchy and complexity. When developing a process model, it's easy to get lost in the details. Real processes often have dozens of steps, each with their own rules and exceptions. For example, take a financial transfer process. There might be 6 separate steps to determine if a transfer is a duplicate. That level of detail is useful for developing an awareness of the questions of the process, but not for understanding the behavior. In ProcessModel, every step requires time, and every decision needs a percentage. Companies rarely collect that data at every microstep. Instead, the company will more likely collect summarized data such as what percentage of transfers are duplicates, and how long do they take to detect and log. Start by capturing enough detail to understand the process, then summarize and simplify the steps for modeling. Your model will accurately reflect reality without becoming overly complex. Activities are the backbone of your model. They define the work performed, processing time, how many units are processed, where things wait, what work costs, when the work can occur, and whether subprocesses apply. With batching and shifts, activities can model anything from simple paperwork to full industrial operations. Master activities and you unlock realistic, flexible process models. Thanks for watching this training video on activities. If you have any questions, start by contacting support@processmodel.com.